Remnant Protocol, the wilderness experience and path to righteousness. Enter you in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat, because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leads unto life, and few there be that find it. Matthew 7:13-14. Preface. The information contained in this lesson and content is developed by a spiritual doctrinal position as originally taught by our Creator to illustrate and share the path to righteousness according to the Word, of taking the straight and narrow gate, Matthew 7:13-14, which is the same path that the remnant, the elect, chosen, etc., have taken to learn the truth in spirit and truth regarding our Creator Yahuah. These hard-to-endure truths, and those that believe in it via sound doctrine in spirit and truth, is the delineation of those who are righteous, thereby studying and obeying the Most High's laws, principles, covenants, and truths without the camp. The mainstream religion's false doctrines, false teachings, traditions of men, etc., which sets them apart from the rest of the world, thereby being in the world but not of it. While many around the globe often wonder what and who they can believe regarding the truth, it will only be a remnant that can endure the truth and separate themselves spiritually from the falsities, lies, deception, that causes many to follow the broad and wide gate that leads to destruction. Matthew 7:13-14. Those that take the narrow gate, which comes at a price, will also reap the benefits and spiritual inheritance promised to them from our Creator for reacquainting themselves with Yahuah, to ensure that His one and only truth for His name's sake is understood, with seeds sown that will come to be prosperous after harvest time, when they are gathered and the knowledge of His written word comes to light during and after the time of judgment for many. These are they that are of the one body, of His only begotten Son, who will save the world from spiritual damnation and set the captives free of the spiritual bondage, lies, false teachings, traditions of men, that was initiated and carried out due to the love of money, the root of all evil, for power, rulership, money, accolades, and notoriety. Each person's path to righteousness is different from the other. What do I mean by that? Your path to righteousness is your journey based upon what you've done in times past, eternity past, that you have no knowledge of and cannot recall. Therefore, your journey in learning and hopefully staying in covenant with your Creator will be fruitful and everlasting, for the race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but to the one that endures until the end. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. Titus 1:9. In this teaching you will learn why Yahuah, Elohim of Yasharal, Israel, used a remnant to facilitate His plan of salvation for the masses, and why it was difficult for most to find their way back to Him on time and in season. Those that seek the path of righteousness are the change makers, change agents, and influencers of Yahuah. Through Yahusha, at this time of the end of world age number 2, at the time of judgment, ushering in the kingdom on earth. During the spiritual landscape of the two worlds, the carnal, natural, and the spiritual colliding as stated throughout the spiritual texts, which Saul writes about throughout the scriptural texts, Romans 7:12, that many don't obtain clarity and understanding. While going through this battle, the remnant is in the shadows in the wilderness. Now let's delve in and discover what the Most High expects from us. Who is Yahuah's remnant? The word remnant in the scriptures is synonymous with various words consistently utilized throughout the scriptures for the reader to identify Yahuah's righteous people. Therefore, the word remnant is also congruent with very elect righteous, sons of Yahuah, remnant of Jacob, remnant of Israel, and many others. So, how is one able to determine who the remnant is according to the scriptures? This question is the very one the masses continue to error, which led them through the broad and wide gate due to the lack of spiritual knowledge, leadership, or by rejecting those that are of the remnant due to the unpopular truths, righteousness, equity, spiritual intelligence, and understanding that focuses on faith of the deliverance of all things of the scriptures in spirit and in truth. To identify the truth of who could possibly be of the remnant, we must be able to identify what the scriptures convey to our spirit in the spirit of righteousness and truth regarding this small group of people, and what they mean to Elohim of Yasharal, Israel, and what they mean to the world. Who is the remnant? Revelations 3 verses 7 through 8, Revelations 10, Philippians 4 verse 3, Revelations 18 verse 4, Revelations 12 verse 6, and Hebrews 1 verses 11 to 13, just to name a few. Revelations 3 verses 7 through 13. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, write, These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that opens, and no man shuts, and shuts, and no man opens. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, and no man can shut it. For you have a little strength, and have kept my word, and have not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. Because you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which you have, that no man take your crown. Him that overcomes will I make a pillar in the temple of my Elohim, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my Elohim, and the name of the city of my Elohim, which is New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my Elohim, and I will write upon him my new name. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. Philippians 4, verses 2 through 4. I beseech Euodias and beseech Syntyche that they be of the same mind in Yahuah. And I entreat you also, true yokefellow, help those women which labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and with other my fellow laborers, whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in Yahuah always, and again I say, rejoice. Revelations 12, verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of Elohim, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So it is the true Yahudim, a convert, one born spiritually of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's seed, who is in covenant with the Elohim of Israel, or a proselyte one from another nation that accepts the righteous ways of Yahweh's one true family, and not a Christian, Muslim, or anyone else who is unqualified to teach you that which you need to know in order for you to rightfully obtain a prophet's reward or inheritance. The culmination of Yahuwah's assembly, represented as the Father and the Son, as well as the sun, moon, and stars, are the representation from the origin of the beginning, Aleph, and fulfilling all that will take place for salvation through the Son during the time of the end Tav, occurring at the end of the times of the Gentiles. The remnant fulfills the following. On being a Hebrew slave, worked 6 days times 2, equal to 12 days. Exodus 16:26, Exodus 20:21, Exodus 34:21, Deuteronomy 5:13, Deuteronomy 16:8, Jeremiah 2:13-14, Matthew 24:39-45, Luke 13:14, and 8 unleavened bread. Genesis 19:4, Exodus 12:15, 1 Corinthians 5:8, Luke 22:7, Acts 12:3, Isaac, Mark 14:1, and I studied to show thyself approved, Isaiah 28:9-13, 2 Timothy 2:15. Fulfillment of the first fruits, Exodus 22:29. Verse 6, an assument of the Abrahamic covenant. Why does Yahuah only utilize a remnant? The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Matthew 9:37, Luke 10, verse 2, Yahuah shares his secrets with his prophets. Amos 3:7 gives the hidden manna. Exodus 16:22-36, and Revelations 2:7, a manna given the key of David. Isaiah 22:22, and Revelations 3:7, properly identifying the alignment as the son of David. Isaiah 9:6-7, 2 Samuel 7:12-13, Psalm 132, verse 11, Matthew 1:1, Matthew 12:9, Mark 10:47, and Luke 3, knowing how to identify the true Yahudim Jews and the impostor Yahudim Jews. Salvation is of the Jews, keeping Elohim's commandments by the Spirit, knowing the true Son of Elohim and not denying his name, King of the Yahudim. So what did the remnant do that the masses did not? Labor and study to show themselves approved, being the Nazarene watchmen, to bring forth the spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence of Yahuah for the time of judgment, the day of Yahuah. Also, by keeping the eye on the prize Elohim of Israel, Yahuah, the one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his Elohim, and he will be my son. Revelations 21:7. Characterization of the remnant who stand as the image of the Son. Yahusha possessed the characteristics of Yahuah by possessing the fruits of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22-23, having the signs of all believers, Mark 16:17-18, serve in the wilderness, Exodus 5:1, Exodus 7:16, Exodus 8:27, Exodus 13:18, Judges 1:16, Job 38:25-28, Psalm 29:7-11, Isaiah 32:16, 35:1, Isaiah 43, Isaiah 4:1-18, Revelation 12:6, Revelation 12:14, Revelation 17:3. As outcasts, Psalms 112, Isaiah 16:3-4, Isaiah 56:8, Jeremiah 3:0-17. The remnant recognizes and identifies as a Yahudim Jew of the Spirit. Romans 2:9-10, Romans 2:17, Romans 2:28-29, 1 Corinthians 9:20, Galatians 3:28, Colossians 3:11. Semitic Hebrew Israelite of the Spirit. Through Jacob's spiritual seed in understanding and believing deriving from the covenant Yahuah made with Abraham, Romans 11:1-10, those of the remnant are also recognized as the wise virgins. Jeremiah 31:4-6, Jeremiah 3:1-13, Matthew 25:1-13. Naturalization and spiritualization. Naturalization, becoming a natural citizen of a country, one who is Hellenized, victimized to take part in the overall scheme of mind control, nationalism, separatism, and not a part of the spiritual mind and understanding of spiritual truth and righteousness, which can only come from Yahuah, Aleph, first, Alpha, beginning, and Yahusha, Tav, last, Omega, end. Spiritualization of Yahuah, becoming a spiritual citizen of Yahuah's spiritual realm, including those who are proselytized and Hebrewized, thereby being grafted into the righteousness of Yahuah in spirit and in truth. These are spiritual human beings that receive the word of Yahuah in spirit and in truth and are part of his collective body. This is all done in the mind, body, individual, and collective, and soul, spirit of a person, and the collectiveness of those of the same one mind of righteousness. Timing and bringing in the remnant sheaves. In speaking about bringing in the remnant, I'm reminded of the hymn, Bringing in the Sheaves. As a young child, hearing this song being sung in the Christian church where I didn't belong, I had no clue as to what it was to my spirit. I honestly don't think many of the parishioners or choir members knew what it truly meant either. Anyway, today I see it clearly as ever in its proper spiritual context. The words are as follows. Verse 1, sowing in the morning, sowing seeds of kindness, sowing in the noontide and the dewy eve, waiting for the harvest and the time of reaping, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Chorus, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Verse 2, sowing in the sunshine, sowing in the shadows, fearing neither clouds nor winter's chilling breeze. By and by the harvest and the labor ended, we shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Chorus. Verse 3, going forth with weeping, sowing for the master. Though the loss sustained, our spirit often grieves. When our weeping's over, he will bid us welcome. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Chorus. The reason why I brought up this popular hymn, often sung in many Christian churches, is because of the lyrics that expresses the gathering of the grains for harvest, when Yahuah brings in his very elect and elect. The sheaves are the barley and wheat the scriptures speak of, to be harvested at Yahuah's appointed time of his Moedim, holy feast days, which are not part of any of man's calendars. When the sheaves or grains, barley and wheat, are brought into the storehouse for gathering and separated from the tares, Matthew 13:24-30, Matthew 13:12, Luke 3:17, Yahuah has gathered in his assembly for his plan of salvation. Now let's talk about Jacob's ladder. Climbing Jacob's ladder. Through wise counsel, knowledge, and studying, the remnant of the collective emphatically knows and operates deriving from being the apple of Yahuah's eye. Deuteronomy 32:9-10, Zechariah 2:6-11. By climbing Jacob's ladder of those that come before and after them when their work is completed, and they are recognized no longer as Jacob but as Israel. Genesis 32:22-32. During the time of climbing Jacob's ladder and being in the wilderness, the remnants have transformed and renewed their mind. Romans 12, through the narrow gate that few will find, Matthew 7:14, to establish and know the truth, to set them free by establishing a relationship with Yahuah in the wilderness without the camp. The spiritual journey of the remnant is identifying they are babes in Yahuah, Matthew 18:3, as they become born again in spirit. John 3:3, 3:7, 1 John 2:29, 3:9, 4:27, 1 Peter, and establish a genuine and authentic relationship in knowing Yahuah. 1 Chronicles 28:9, Jeremiah 2:9-13, John 15:4, Luke 10:21-22. The cost and privileges for righteousness. If you've spent time with me in these studies, you've heard me say quite often, there's a cost or price to pay for everything. Our salvation is no different. There are costs and a price to be paid for our salvation like everything else. While many often think in terms of a monetary price paid by money, that's not always the case and isn't the case for your salvation. Instead, the price paid for salvation and the remission of sin, once understood in its proper context, is paid by the role, actions, wisdom, knowledge, truth, disseminating and nurturing the seed of righteousness in the hearts and minds of the inhabitants. The price is paid by Hamashiach, the Messiah, in you, when understanding in its proper context. Those of the body of Yahusha, plurality and singularity, are the prophets and others who are members of the one body, who sacrifice their time, studies, writings, and teachings for the sake of righteousness, for Yahuah's name's sake, to occur during specific appointed times known as the Moedim, who then present their good works unto Yahuah. The cost paid by the remnant taking the narrow gate, Matthew 7:13-14, is often referred to by many other names other than remnants throughout the scriptural text as mentioned earlier. These are the few who sacrificed for many are called but few are chosen. Matthew 20:16, Matthew 22:14. The privilege of said righteousness is the fulfillment of operating in spirit and truth and enjoying the time of the kingdom on earth as it is in Shamayim, heaven. Are you in the world, but not of the world? Let's see, in the world, but not of the world. Alahim Shel Yasharal's remnant sanctuaries have been and are in the world, but not of the world. Many have heard this phrase in Scripture, Romans 12:2. But exactly what does this mean? Let us examine this closely for clarity and understanding. We know that each world age has specific time frames that Satan is given authority and power to rule, as pointed out in many of our lessons. So, where do the remnant go in the time of Satan's rule and authority? Exactly where is this wilderness where the remnant would go to hide and protect themselves from the wiles of Satan and his cohorts? Is this a physical and natural wilderness, or would this be a spiritual wilderness? Well, as you should know by now from reading, studying, and learning our doctrinal position, this too is a spiritual wilderness. Now, exactly what does this mean? This means that those who were in the world, false prophets, false teachers, false government, the deceived, bamboozled, and beguiled in spiritual darkness, thereby subscribing to, having faith and belief in, and fueling the power, energy, and spirit of evil, have come out of her as instructed by Yahuah, and hopefully on time and in season, as required to inherit the rulership of the kingdom on earth by finding and being the light of the world. Else they may see the kingdom but not have the benefits from the works performed by those who sought Yahuah. Therefore, those who came out of the worldwide deception that Satan and the beast has orchestrated came out spiritually, but not physically or naturally. This remnant is also referred to as ecclesia, Latin and Greek words used during translations, also translated in English as church, but is Yahuah's assembly or congregation. All three of these words utilized in the scriptures delineate this group of people from the others. The spiritual definition to these three words is those that are called out, or the called out ones, which is synonymous to the remnant, the elect, the 144,000, friends of Yahuah, wise virgins, prophets, righteous, and sons of Yahuah, just to name a few. Having come out of her, the remnant then studies to show themselves approved without the camp and pray for spiritual knowledge, intelligence, wisdom, understanding, and instruction. This now prepares them for having the ears to hear and the eyes to see when the true prophets share true spiritual knowledge with them. When they hear and see, understand this information by way of the prophets, it piques their curiosity and pricks their heart to want to learn more of the truth in spirit and in truth. This curiosity then causes them to ask questions and want to learn more by way of those that have this spiritual knowledge and information regarding our Creator, Yahuah. Having taken the proper steps to come out of her, one now has the ability to learn the truth as they humble themselves as a child in the word of Elohim and New World, and learn in small environments where they can truly study for spiritual knowledge, awareness, and wisdom, thereby getting to know our Creator. This process is known as the renewing of one's mind. Romans 12:1-3, which reads as follows: I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto Elohim, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Elohim. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as Elohim has dealt to every man the measure of faith. As one's mind is being renewed, Yahuah instructs that all things in teaching and learning must be done decently and in order. 1 Corinthians 14:40, as Yahuah's ways are not man's ways, nor are his thoughts man's thoughts. Isaiah 55:8-9. Hence, the ways of learning are different than of man's Satan's world and methods of education and learning. Therefore, you can now see and understand that the remnant and remnant protocol require all are to come out of the world, Satan's dominion, spiritual darkness, and into spiritual light, spiritual knowledge, awareness, wisdom, and living, to exemplify and exalt our Creator, Yahuah, and abide by the two greatest commandments which hang all the Torah and the prophets. So, as you can see, understand, the remnant was hidden in plain sight, all along with various ones knocking and entering the door at different times, while the world knew not what was and is transpiring. Although we were walking, talking, and working in the natural world, the remnant is in the shadows, building Yahuah's assembly in the wilderness, all while being hidden in plain sight. This is why the world proclaims that the Yahuah, Elohim, Shel Yasharal, is a mysterious Elohim. Remember, he is only mysterious to those that don't know him. Elohim Shel Yasharal, Yahuah, is demystified to his remnant friends, just as we are demystified to those that take the time to get to know us in love. For the sake of time of this video lesson, I'm not going to read the next several scriptural passages. However, I encourage you to study them in context, and you can review with the soft copy of this lesson. The scriptural passages are Numbers chapter 2, 1 Peter 3 verse 4, Isaiah 40 verses 3 through 5, Deuteronomy 32 verses 9 through 12, Deuteronomy 2 verse 7, Exodus 3:18, Mark 1 verses 12 and 13, Ezekiel 20 verse 10, and last but not least, Ezekiel 20 verse 35 through 41. Now, the breath of life. I cover the breath of life in more detail in the lesson, the truth regarding the Garden of Eden, which is part of the While You Were Sleeping series. As you often hear me say what the scriptures declare, Yahuah's plan of salvation calls the end from the beginning. So, let's review some scriptural passages from Revelations and then Genesis, Revelations 11, verse 11 through 14. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Yahuah entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven, saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the Yahuah of heaven. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Genesis 7, verses 15 through 22. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as Yahuah had commanded him, and Yahuah shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed, and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl, and of cattle, and of beasts, and of every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. Genesis 2, verses 6 through 8. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And Yahuah, Yahuah, formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. And Yahuah, Yahuah, planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. Genesis 6, verses 17 and 18. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with you will I establish my covenant, and you shall come into the ark, you, and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. So, here we can see Yahuah bringing an end to World Age 2, the time of the Gentiles, and ushering in the kingdom on earth, which is back to the Garden of Eden. Yahuah is Aleph, first, Alpha, beginning, and Yahusha is Tav, last, Omega, end. Isn't this awesome? Now the divine. So many often think of divine as something external, when divine is the higher consciousness of righteousness in spirit and truth, which is who our Creator Yahuah is, John 4:23-24, in us, The divine of Yahuah's plan of salvation brings us to his appointed times, the Moedim, or the holy feast days, for his assembly to fulfill. I'm not going to read out all of the scriptural references, but be sure to make note, obtain a soft copy of the lesson, and review the scriptures. This divine plan encompasses the following: divine design, divine calling, divine intelligence and wisdom, divine uniqueness, divine purpose, divine separation, divine assignment, and divine alignment. Now, are you called to be Elohims? Psalm 82 verses 4 through 6, Isaiah 41 verse 23, John 10 verse 34. Are you fulfilling your divine calling in your uniqueness and purpose in alignment with Yahuah? The chosen ones, who are of the remnant, are doing just that. This concludes this lesson regarding the Remnant Protocol, a wilderness experience. I hope and trust that it brings knowledge, awareness, wisdom, and understanding to your mind, body, soul, and spirit. Shalom.